The $40 trillion debt bomb, no one can stop, the clock is ticking. Somewhere in a marble-floored building in Washington, a number grows. Every second. Every breath you take. $40 trillion. And counting. The largest debt accumulation in human history. Larger than the entire economy of China and Japan combined, a mountain of IOUs so massive that if you stacked it in $100 bills, it would reach the moon. Twice. Nobody saw it coming. Or did they? The pattern is always the same. Picture yourself standing in the Weimar Republic, 1923. A loaf of bread costs 200 billion marks, your life savings gone. Evaporated overnight. Now picture Argentina. 1989 inflation hits 3,000%. A worker's monthly salary buys a single steak. Now picture Zimbabwe. Those Milocha $100 trillion bills used as toilet paper. The pattern is always the same. First comes the borrowing. Governments promise prosperity, infrastructure, healthcare, military dominance. They print money like it's air. The economy feels good. Markets soar. Everyone's a genius. Then comes the debt, mountains of it. Unsustainable, unpayable. Finally comes the reckoning. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The $40 trillion debt bomb isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. It's a loaded weapon pointed at every dollar in your wallet, every asset you own, every dream you have for your children. And the fuse? It's already lit. The architects of collapse. Let's rewind to 1971. President Nixon closes the gold window. For the first time in history, the world's reserve currency is backed by nothing. Not gold, not silver, just faith. Faith in American power. Faith in American institutions. Faith that pieces of green paper would always have value. Imagine this. You're holding a dollar bill. Before 1971, that dollar represented a claim on actual gold sitting in Fort Knox. Real wealth, real value. After 1971, it represents a promise, a government IOU. And governments, as history proves again and again, break their promises. The pattern is always the same. The Federal Reserve, a private institution with a government name, becomes the great enabler. When the economy stumbles, they print. When banks fail, they print. When politicians need money for wars and welfare, they print. From 2008 to 2024, the Fed's balance sheet explodes from $800 billion to over $9 trillion. Money created from nothing. Digits on a computer screen. But here's what they don't tell you. Every dollar printed dilutes. Every dollar in existence. Your savings. Your pension. Your future. Stolen silently through the invisible tax called inflation. The numbers tell a terrifying story. 1980, U.S. national debt sits at $900 billion. 2000, it crosses $5 trillion. 2008, financial crisis hits. Debt jumps to $10 trillion. 2020, pandemic, stimulus bailouts. Debt rockets to $27 trillion. 2024, we stand at $40 trillion. And rising. Picture the world waking up tomorrow to discover this. The United States government now pays over $1 trillion per year just in interest payments. Not building roads. Not funding schools. Not defending borders whose interests on money already spent, on promises already broken. Nobody saw it coming. Except those who studied history. The great unraveling begins. Every empire follows the same trajectory. Rome, Spain, Britain. First comes military dominance, then economic supremacy, then then debt, then collapse. The Roman Empire debased its currency, mixing cheap metals with silver to fund endless wars and a bloated government. The denarius, once pure silver, became worthless. The empire fell not to barbarians, but to bankruptcy. The Spanish Empire discovered gold and silver in the New World. mountains of it, yet within a century, Spain was bankrupt. Why? They printed too much money. Basic economics. When you flood the market with currency, it becomes worthless. The same gold that made Spain rich destroyed it. The British Empire ruled the waves. The pound sterling was the world's reserve currency, until 2 world wars, massive debt, and imperial overreach broke them. By 1944, the pound was replaced by the dollar. This time, it will be worse, because the American debt bomb isn't happening in isolation. It's happening while China holds over $800 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds, a financial nuclear weapon they could detonate at will. The BRICS nations Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa are actively working to replace the dollar in international trade. Over 40% of the world's population plotting to end American financial hegemony. Global debt government. Corporate household exceeds $300 trillion, more than 3 times global GDP. Mathematically impossible to repay. Central banks worldwide are trapped. Raise interest rates, crash the economy, lower rates. Fuel inflation. Print money, destroy the currency. There is no exit strategy. The pattern is always the same. The hidden hand in 1910, 7 men gathered in secret on Jekyll Island, Georgia, representatives of the world's most powerful banking families, Rockefeller, Morgan Rothschild. Their mission: design the Federal Reserve System, a central bank disguised as a government institution, a private cartel with the power to print money, set interest rates, and control the American economy. The Federal Reserve Act passes in 1930, non-December 23rd, when most congressmen are home for Christmas. Few read it, fewer understand it. But from that moment forward, control of American money shifts from the government to private bankers. Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. The quote, often attributed to Meyer Amstad Rothschild, captures the essence of modern power. Political leaders come and go, but those who control the creation of money, they rule forever. Fast forward to today. BlackRock manages over $10 trillion in assets, more than the GDP of every country except the US and China. They own pieces of every major corporation. They whisper in the ears of presidents and prime ministers. They are the invisible hand. Vanguard, State Street, JP Morgan, a handful of firms controlling trillions, interconnected through boards of directors, shared investments, and mutual interests. They don't compete, they coordinate. A financial oligarchy hiding in plain sight. Picture this. You think you're choosing between Coca-Cola and Pepsi, Nike and Adidas, Ford and GM. But look deeper. The same investment firms own controlling shares in both companies. The illusion of choice. The reality of control. Nobody saw it coming, because nobody was looking. The currency war has already started. Beijing, a secure room in the People's Bank of China. Officials review reports. The digital yuan fully operational, ready to replace the dollar in international trade. No longer just a plan, a weapon. Moscow. The Kremlin. Putin meets with economic advisors. Russia stockpiles gold at unprecedented rates, over 2,300 tons. Preparing for the day the dollar dies. Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. For 50 years, oil was sold exclusively in dollars. The petrodollar system that guaranteed American dominance. Now the Saudis flirt with China. Accept yuan for oil. The foundation cracks. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Every reserve currency in history eventually falls. The Spanish real, the Dutch guilde, the British pound. The average lifespan, 94 years. The dollar became the world's reserve currency in 1944. It's been 80 years. Time is running out. The warning signs are everywhere. 2023. Saudi Arabia joins the BRICS Plus alliance, opens discussions to trade oil in currencies other than the dollar. 2024. Multiple nations announce bilateral trade agreements bypassing the dollar entirely. Brazil and China, India and Russia, Indonesia and Malaysia. The BRICS payment system, an alternative to SWIFT, goes live. Suddenly, American sanctions lose their teeth. The dollar's weaponization becomes its weakness. Imagine this scenario. You wake up tomorrow. China announces it's dumping $500 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds. Markets panic. The dollar plunges 30% overnight. Your imported goods, clothes, electronics, food triple in price. Your purchasing power evaporates. Chaos. This time, it will be worse. Because when the dollar falls, it won't fall alone. The entire global financial system is built on dollar dominance. International trade, commodity pricing, debt contracts, all denominated in dollars. When the reserve currency collapses, everything collapses. The $40 trillion. Question? Let's talk mathematics. Cold, brutal, undeniable U.S. GDP. Approximately $28 trillion. U.S. national debt $40 trillion. Debt to GDP ratio 143%. This is the danger zone. Historically, when a nation's debt exceeds 90% of GDP, economic growth slows dramatically. Above 120%, high risk of crisis above 140%, you're in uncharted territory. Only a handful of nations have ever exceeded this level. Greece before its collapse. Italy, Japan, which has survived only because it owes money to itself in its own currency. But America is different. The U.S. owes trillions to foreign nations. China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, European allies. When confidence breaks sand, it will break. These creditors won't wait around for pennies on the dollar. Picture the world waking up to this headline. U.S. Treasury auction fells no buyers. It's happened before. It will happen again. When governments can't find buyers for their debt, they have three options. Default, declare bankruptcy, refuse to pay creditors, lose everything. Global financial system not an option for the world's reserve currency, austerity/spending. Cut programs, raise taxes, political suicide, civil unrest. Revolution, no politician will choose this. Print money. Monetize the debt. The Federal Reserve buys government bonds with freshly printed dollars. Inflation explodes. The currency dies slowly instead of quickly. The pattern is always the same. They will choose door number 3. They always do. The inflation monster. Let's travel back to Germany. 1923. The Weimar Republic faces massive war reparations from World War I. They can't pay, so they print, and print, and print. January 1923, $1 buys 17,000 marks. November 1923, $1 buys 4.2 trillion marks. Workers are paid twice a day because by evening, their morning wages are worthless. People burn money in stoves because it's cheaper than buying firewood. A wheelbarrow full of cash buys a loaf of bread. Nobody saw it coming. Until it was too late. The social consequences. Catastrophic. The middle class wiped out. Savings gone. Pensions worthless. Desperation breeds extremism. Adolf Hitler rises from this chaos. Now look at America. 2020 a 2024. The Fed prints $5 trillion in 2 years. Temporary inflation, transitory, they said. But inflation hits 9%, the highest in 40 years. Food prices soar. Gas doubles. Housing becomes unaffordable. The middle class squeezed. The official story. We've got it under control. The truth. They're terrified, because here's what they won't tell you. Real inflation is much higher than reported. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, is manipulated. They changed the formula in the 1990s to understate inflation. Housing costs barely reflected, food and energy often excluded. The real inflation rate, closer to 15 to 20%. Your dollar buys less. Your salary buys less. Your savings erode. But the government claims everything is fine. This time, it will be worse, because the next crisis won't be fixed with more printing. We've already printed too much. The debt bomb ensures that any future crisis will be met with even more desperate monetary creation, each cycle worse than the last. Until the currency breaks, the elite's escape plan. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The people who created this system know it's unsustainable. They've known for decades, and they've been preparing. Gold. Central banks worldwide are buying gold at rates not seen since the Cold War. Russia, China, India, Turkey. Even Western central banks are stockpiling. Why? Because gold is the ultimate safe haven when fiat currencies collapse. Bitcoin and crypto. Love it or hate it. Bitcoin represents an escape from central bank control. A decentralized currency, immune to government printing. The elites mock it publicly while accumulating privately. Real assets. BlackRock, Vanguard, and mega-wealthy individuals are buying farmland, real estate, infrastructure, and commodities. Physical assets that hold value when currencies fail. Private islands and bunkers. Tech billionaires and hedge fund managers building survival compounds in New Zealand, Montana, and remote locations. They're not preparing for fun, they're preparing for collapse. Picture this. While they tell you everything is fine, the ultra-wealthy are moving their money into hard assets. While they promise stability, they're buying gold. While they preach patience, they're building escape routes. Nobody saw it coming, because nobody wanted to see. The pattern is always the same. Those who create crises profit from crises. Those who control the system ensure they survive when the system falls. The 2026 convergence mark this year. 2026. Multiple crisis points converge. U.S. debt ceiling battles intensify. Political gridlock. Threats of default. Market panic. Interest rate pressure. If rates stay high, debt service costs explode over $1.5 trillion annually. If rates drop, INFLATION returns with a vengeance. BRICS currency launch. Expected a gold-backed or commodity-backed alternative to the dollar. Dozens of nations ready to adopt U.S. presidential election cycle. Uncertainty, instability, policy, chaos, Social Security and Medicare funding crisis, trust funds depleting, promises that cannot be kept, geopolitical tensions peak. Taiwan, Ukraine, Middle East, multiple powder kegs ready to ignite. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. 1929. The Great Depression begins with a stock market crash. Takes 4 years to bottom. Takes 25 years to recover. 1971. Bretton Woods collapses. Gold standard abandoned. Decade of stagflation follows. 2008. Financial crisis. Banks collapse. Housing market implodes. $10 trillion in wealth evaporates. 2020. Pandemic, economic shutdown. Money printing on steroids. Inflation returns. 2026. The convergence. Multiple crises colliding. No more tools left, no more tricks, just consequences. The domino effect. Imagine this scenario. Step by step. Step 1. A major foreign creditor, say China, begins quietly selling U.S. Treasury bonds. Not a dump, a steady seal. Testing the market. Step 2. Bond prices fall. Yields spike. Suddenly the U.S. government must pay higher interest rates to attract buyers. Debt service costs explode. Step 3. The Federal Reserve faces a choice. Let rates rise and crash the economy, or print money to buy the bonds themselves. They choose printing. Step 4. Inflation accelerates. Death porcentu, 15%, 20%. The Fed loses credibility. The dollar weakens internationally. Step 5. Foreign nations panic. Rush to exit dollar reserves. The sell-off becomes a stampede. Step 6. Hyperinflation, currency collapse, social chaos. Nobody saw it coming. Except it's happened before, multiple times, different countries, same pattern. Venezuela had the largest oil reserves in the world. They printed money to fund socialist programs. By 2018, inflation hit 1,000,000%. People fled. The wealthy escaped. The poor suffered. Turkey, Argentina, Lebanon, Zimbabwe. The list grows every decade. Each nation thought, it can't happen to us. Each nation was wrong. This time, it will be worse. Because when the world's reserve currency collapses, there is no backup. No IMF bailout, no rescue package. Just chaos on a global scale. The social cost numbers on a screen don't capture the human reality of economic collapse. Picture a single mother working 2 jobs. Her rent consumes 60% of her income, up from 30% 5 years ago. Her grocery bill has doubled. Her car payment is now unaffordable. She's one emergency away from homelessness. She did everything right, worked hard, saved what she could. But inflation stole her future. Picture a retiree. Save $500,000 for retirement. Seemed like enough in 2010. But inflation and low interest rates on savings eroded its value. That $500,000 has the purchasing power of maybe $300,000. His pension, if he's lucky enough to have one, doesn't cover rising costs. He's forced to choose between medicine and food. Picture a young couple. Both colleagues, both working professional jobs. They want to buy a house, start a family, build a life. But housing prices have tripled. Student loans crush them. Childcare costs more than mortgage payments used to. The American dream, dead. The pattern is always the same. The wealthy survive. The middle class gets destroyed. The poor suffer most. When currencies collapse, social fabric tears. Crime explodes. Desperate people do desperate things. Political extremism rises, left and right. Revolution skews. International conflict increases. Economic wars become shooting wars. Trust evaporates. In government, in institutions, in AHOTER. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Weimar, Germany, bred. Nazism. Argentina's hyperinflation led to military dictatorship. Venezuela's collapse created the largest refugee crisis in Latin American history. Zimbabwe's implosion resulted in political violence and authoritarianism. What happens when the world's largest economy collapses? When 330 million Americans face hyperinflation? When the global reserve currency dies? Nobody wants to imagine it, but history demands we consider it. The final countdown. We stand at a crossroads. The $40 trillion debt bomb ticks louder each day. The fuse burns shorter, and the world watches, transfixed, unable to stop what's coming. The mathematics are undeniable. The history is clear. The pattern is always the same. Governments that print money destroy their currencies. Nations that borrow beyond their means face reckoning. Empires that overextend collapse. No exceptions. Not in 5,000 years of recorded history. This time, it will be worse. Because the scale is unprecedented. Because the interconnectedness of global finance means no country escapes. Because the weapons, financial, cyber, military, are more destructive than ever. Picture the world in 2030. 2 possible scenarios. Scenario 1. Somehow, miraculously, the debt is managed. Spending is cut. Taxes are raised. Growth accelerates. The dollar survives. Crisis averted. The system continues. The probability? Near zero. It requires political will that doesn't exist. Sacrifices no one will make. Pain no one will accept. Scenario 2. The bomb detonates. Maybe a spark from geopolitics. Maybe a failed treasury auction. Maybe a loss of confidence. The trigger doesn't matter. The debt spiral accelerates. Currency collapse follows. Social chaos erupts. the world order resets. The probability, history says this is the likely outcome, the uncomfortable truth. Here's what keeps me awake at night. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is mathematics, economics, history, cold, brutal reality. The $40 trillion debt bomb exists. It's growing, and nobody, not the Fed, not Congress, not the president, not even the elites can stop it without causing the very crisis they're trying to avoid. Every solution makes the problem worse. Cut spending, economic depression, political suicide, raise taxes, capital flight. Economic contraction, default, global financial collapse, end of dollar dominance. Print more money, inflation, currency, destruction, social chaos. There is no good option. Only less terrible ones. And even those require courage that modern politicians lack. The pattern is always the same. Empires don't end because of external threats. They end because of internal contradictions. Debt, currency, debasement, loss of confidence. The rot from within. Rome fell not to barbarians, but to bankruptcy and moral decay. Spain collapsed under its own debt. Britain bankrupted itself, defending an empire it could no longer afford. Now America faces the same test. Nobody saw it coming, because nobody wanted to see, because acknowledging the problem requires acknowledging the solution, and the solution requires sacrifice that no one will accept. The question no one will ask, here's the part they don't want you to think about. What if the collapse isn't an accident? What if it's the plan? Consider. Every major economic crisis in the past century resulted in greater centralization of power, greater government control, greater wealth transfer from middle class to elites. 1929. Great Depression leads to massive expansion of federal power. New Deal, Social Security, permanent welfare state. 1971. Dollar decoupled from gold. Inflation transfers wealth from savers to debtors and asset owners. 2008. Financial crisis. Banks bailed out. Quantitative easing enriches asset holders. Wealth gap explodes. 2020. Pandemic. Trillions printed. Small businesses destroyed. Big tech and big finance thrive. The pattern is always the same. Crisis, reaction, solution, and the solution always involves more power for the few, less freedom for the many. So ask yourself, when the $40 trillion debt bomb finally detonates and at will, who benefits, who suffers, and who decides? Central banks will offer the solution. Central bank digital currencies. Complete control over every transaction, every purchase, every dollar you own. Trackable, freesaable, controllable. No more cash. No more privacy. No more freedom. Governments will offer security in exchange for liberty. Trust us, they'll say. We'll fix this. Just surrender a little more freedom, a little more privacy, a little more control. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And the rhyme here is chilling. The silent majority here is the most disturbing part of this entire crisis. Most people don't see it coming. They're too busy surviving day to day. Working, paying bills, raising kids, living life. They trust the system because the system has always worked, at least within their lifetime. They believe the experts when they say everything is fine. They assume someone smarter is handling it. Nobody saw it coming because nobody was looking. But ignorance doesn't prevent consequences. The debt bomb doesn't care if you're aware of it. Hyperinflation doesn't ask permission. Economic collapse doesn't wait for everyone to understand. The terrifying truth: by the time the average person realizes what's happening, it will be too late. Their savings will be gone. Their currency worthless. Their options limited. This is what keeps historians, economists, and anyone paying attention awake at night. Not the crisis itself. Crises are inevitable. But the awareness gap, The millions who will be blindsided, the families destroyed because they trusted a system that was always destined to fail. The legacy we leave. Picture yourself in 2050. Looking back at this moment, what will you tell your children? Your grandchildren? Will you tell them you saw the warning signs, but did nothing? That you knew the debt was unsustainable, but hoped someone else would fix it? That you watched the empire crumble in real time, but convinced yourself it couldn't happen? Or will you tell them you prepared, that you protected your family, that you understood history and refused to repeat it? The $40 trillion debt bomb is not a future problem. It's a present reality. Every day it grows larger. Every day the fuse burns shorter. Every day we move closer to a reckoning that will reshape the world. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And if you listen carefully, you can hear the echoes of every fallen empire, every collapsed currency, every society that printed its way to destruction. The Roman denarius, the Spanish real, the German mark, the Zimbabwean dollar, the Venezuelan bala, all dead currencies, all victims of the same disease, unsustainable debt and monetary expansion. The American dollar is not special. It is not immune. It is not different this time. This time, it will be worse. Because when the world's reserve currency fails, there is no backup. No safe haven, no escape for the unprepared. The final truth. The $40 trillion debt bomb cannot be stopped. The mathematics are impossible. The politics are gridlocked. The history is clear. Empires rise. Empires overextend. Empires borrow beyond their means. Empires collapse. The pattern is always the same. We are living through the beginning of the end of American financial dominance. Not because of military defeat, not because of foreign invasion, but because of the oldest force in economics: debt. The question isn't if the crisis will come. The question is when. And are you prepared? Nobody saw it coming, except those who studied history. Those who read the warning signs, those who refused to believe that this time is different. This time is not different. This time is exactly the same. Just bigger, more global, more catastrophic. The bomb is ticking. The fuse is lit. And there's no diffusing it. Are you ready for what comes next?